really like an opportunity to tell you more about why we think that climate change is an issue that's connected to all of those issues that you're saying that you're so deeply connected to, that we agree are such important issues. And we really, really believe and know with everything within us that climate change is an issue unlike any other, because it is the air we breathe, it is the water in our bodies. So please give us an opportunity to share more, to connect with you and share. We know what your stance is, so let's give us a little space so that we can tell you more about what our stance is as young people. So let us talk to you. We have a speaker here, Sarah. She's 15 and she really wants to share something. So can we give her a moment to do that?
And I'm happy to hear from you, Sarah, but I want you to understand that, like, I don't need to be convinced on this issue. I think you're missing the point.
Right, but you represent the DNC to us. So when we are talking to you, we are talking to the DNC.
I'm actually not a DNC representative. I represent the Rhode Island Democratic Party. I'm the executive director of the Rhode Island Democratic Party. I am not a DNC
Which is our connection to the national party. So please give us the space to.
Please go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you. I really do appreciate your opportunity to hear us out. And before I start, I also just want to address, like, exactly what you were saying, that, like, for years and years and years, the climate movement and the environmental movement has been majorly like a wealthy white man's movement, and it has been like my crisis is bigger than your crisis. And that at heart is, I think, exactly what Sunrise wants to oppose. That's like the idea that Sunrise is trying to bring to the public, is that climate justice and environmental racism are like hand in hand, and so many other issues like go along with the climate crisis. Like, if we want to solve the climate crisis, we also have to solve the democracy crisis. So I've only been with Sunrise since January, and like even in that time, like the experience that I've had here has really like changed my view about how like all major like social justice issues intersect with climate. So I do appreciate you like pointing that out. So yeah, like I said, I've been with Sunrise since January, and in basically that time, that's been the only time that I've actually known about the climate crisis. I wasn't taught anything about it in school. I had to teach myself the science, and I spent like weeks, months just doing all of the research that I possibly could and trying to find out everything that I could about climate change, and I was completely absorbed by it, and I couldn't really think about anything else. And if you're wondering why, it's because imagine that there's an existential crisis to the planet that you live on, and people have known about it in great detail for 40 years at least, and it threatens your immediate future, and it decides whether or not you get to dream about that future, and it will wipe away everything that you've loved and you've called home, and no one told you anything about it until it was nearly too late. So in like the winter when I was doing all of this research, I found myself with this knowledge in my hands, and it made perfect sense to me how to solve this crisis and how to do it right now, but that wasn't my call to make. Like, I wasn't in a position of power. I didn't have political influence. I didn't have anything. I was just me. And so I got lost. I got really, really lost. And I didn't know what to do, because my whole life I had this idea that I would grow up to have a family and maybe become a teacher or a lawyer. I really wanted to be a lawyer. But I realized that this knowledge just washed over me, that I can't do that anymore, because now I have to spend my life fighting for my survival, because I can't just have this knowledge and just do nothing with it. So like the future at my age is something that you're supposed to like be excited about, that you're supposed to be able to dream about, but I'm terrified of my future. I don't want to grow up. I don't want to grow up in a world that's being burned right in front of my eyes. No one does. So in April, it was April the 15th, I think, I was in an action that Sunrise was doing, and I had gotten there a little too early, so I was sitting in this huge auditorium with really high ceilings, and I was surrounded by all these like empty crimson seats. And so, like I said, it was too early, so I opened my laptop to check on the news, and these headlines were all like flashing at me. The Cathedral Notre Dame is burning. The spire collapsed this morning. There are people gathered around in Paris. It's 11 o'clock at night in Paris now, and people are gathered around the cathedral, and they're singing. So I sat up that night when I got home, and I watched and I listened to this one news broadcast over and over again, where the people of Paris had gathered around the ruins of the cathedral, and they were singing. And I watched it over and over, and I could feel the tears pouring down from my eyes, and I knew that I wasn't crying for Notre Dame. I realized that it was because I had seen this happening before, that something so beautiful and surreal that had taken centuries to create, something that can never truly be recreated, disappeared in the blink of an eye. Breathe and you'll miss it. Something that could never be alive again, no matter how much reconstruction it underwent. Just completely gone. And the world watched as that happened. And I realized that in my lifetime, that would happen over and over again. Only this time, instead of cathedrals, it'd be cities, cultures, ecosystems, civilizations, and species. One by one, they've all begun to crumble. So I picked up my phone and I called my dad, and I asked him, "Did you see what's happening? It's burning to the ground, it's burning right now." And the only thing he said was, "Well, it'll be rebuilt." And I remember thinking, that's not the point. That wasn't what I was trying to say. Just because it'll be rebuilt doesn't mean that we get to ignore the fact that it's burning right now. And I didn't understand the fact that, like, we were all just standing around taking for granted that we would have another one when the real thing was turning to ashes at our feet. We are all watching the world burn. Some of us, my friends and I, we are singing. Some people are standing watching the ruins. They're wide-eyed. They don't know what to think. And some people are standing among us with fire hoses. They have the power to stop the destruction, but they look on and they do their best to look away. But we've come here to tell you that the longer that the Democratic Party looks away, there'll be nothing left to look back to. See, we wouldn't be here if our survival didn't depend on it. Because the decisions that get made in the next 11 years, as you well know, determine whether or not we get to go on. So that means that the decisions made by the next president to stop the climate crisis, that's pretty much it. That's all we've got. We either save ourselves or we don't. And we as young people, as Americans, but what's more, as human beings, we need to know into whose hands we are laying our futures. And we can't do that with 15 minutes of climate debate. What's that? Is that 1 minute for every year that I've been alive? Is that what we're worth? So ask yourself, what the children that you see every day, what are they worth? What are we worth? How are we supposed to really understand what we're worth to the candidates who have the only window of time left to save us? Most of them think that we're worth more than 15 minutes. That's why they're calling for a climate debate too. But as you said, the DNC gets to make that call, not any of us. We are here because we need you to look us in the eyes and tell us how much we're worth. And then stand up and use the power that you have to tell the DNC the same. The crowds at Notre Dame were singing out. They were singing because they were filled with sorrow. But I am singing because I am afraid. I am afraid that the people who have the power to put out the fire will be ignored. I'm afraid that we will not elect leaders who have the power to do it. I'm afraid that I alone am not enough. I'm here today because I need you to look me in the eyes and tell me that you'll try. You have to try.
We rise, humbly hearted rise, won't be divided, rise, with spirit to guide us, rise. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. We rise, all of the children rise, elders with wisdom rise, with spirit to guide us rise. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. We rise, up from the wreckage, rise, with tears and with courage, rise, fighting for life, rise. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer,